67 million years ago, in what is now the state of Wyoming, the Lance Formation was populated by many unique and beloved dinosaurs such as the mighty Torosaurus and the fearsome Tyrannosaurus. Two absolutely enormous dinosaurs, but also ones that are not very common to find specimens of. Luckily, the Tate Geological Museum in Casper, Wyoming has both, and on today's episode of Exhibit Expo, we'll be delving into the stories of Lee Rex and Nicole the Torosaurus, Tate Geological's Lancian legends. On our trip through the Tate, we'll be guided by J.P. Cavagelli, coordinator of the Tate Museum.
Hello, my name is J.P. Cavagelli. I'm the field trip organizer and collections manager and prep lab manager at the Tate Geological Museum in Casper, Wyoming. We are sitting here today looking at the Tate Museum's T-Rex specimen. This is a pretty cool specimen in that it's fairly articulated. It's not terribly complete, but it's a good chunk of the animal. So what we're looking at here is the middle part of the animal. We have the pelvis right here next to me. From here to here is the ilium, the bottom of the pelvis. Two other bones are going off in that direction over there. Going in this direction, we have vertebrae and ribs. So going towards the shoulder, we do not have the shoulder or arms. The only leg bone we have is the femur right here from the left side of the animal. And behind me is about 7 or 8 or 12 vertebrae from the tail. People often want to know how complete these T-Rex specimens are. And that's a question that nobody ever gives you the right answer. They tell you it's fill in the numbers complete, but there are questions to be asked once someone gives you the number. I will tell you that in terms of percentage of bones, a T-Rex has about 300 bones in it, including all the tail bones. And we have represented about 60 of them. So that's actually about 20%. That includes rib heads. So a rib head is just the part of the rib that connects to the vertebra. And a rib head this big would count as a bone because it is represented. We have some of the bigger bones in the body, the femur, the ilium here, the pubis over there. We don't have any of the small bones, so if we want to measure this by percentage-wise of size, we're getting even higher there because we have some big bones.
Before we begin our discussion of these two fossils, there is one more that needs to be brought up. Meet Dead Sheep 148. Now, despite the name, this is obviously not a sheep. Dead Sheep 148 is in fact a partially articulated fossil of Edmontosaurus annectens. The reasoning for its somewhat misnomer nickname was because in 2005 the fossil was found on a fossil dig site near, as the name implies, a dead sheep, on the ground that was marked with the number 148. According to the Tate Museum crew, Edmontosaurus fossils appear quite commonly in the Lance Formation, and are jokingly referred to as the cockroaches of the Cretaceous on occasion. About a mile away from the Dead Sheep 148 site, an exposed dinosaur bone was located. Of course, this bone would remain untouched for years as an example piece until further examination was given. The distinct spool-shaped vertebrae and rounded chevrons give a clue that this was no ordinary Edmontosaurus, and in fact was something quite different.
It was in a concretion, which is a really hard rock, so all we could see was a few pieces of vertebra and the hard rock that was in. So we left it as a show and tell specimen out in the field. We had 3 goals when we exposed the rock. One was to find out how big it is, what it might be, and what the heck are we going to do with it.
By 2011, this Tyrannosaurus, nicknamed Lee Rex, had been brought to the museum, but it presented quite a large problem. The fossil was much too large to be adequately housed in the main halls of the museum, so finding space for this giant fossil was troubling.
So it turned out to be 18 feet long and 8 feet wide.
Not only is it very wide and tall, but it's fragile, frozen in an articulated state, and extremely heavy. It can't fit through the doors, and it's too heavy to be propped against a wall, and especially too heavy to lay on the ground, as it's feared it could break the floor of the building. Fortunately, in 2016, an extension of the building was constructed to house Lee Rex, and also provide ventilation to allow the fossil to be further excavated. On top of being a massive articulated T-Rex fossil, as well as the first T-Rex from Wyoming to actually stay in the state, Lee Rex has a few pathologies that provide a glimpse into what its life may have been like. A few of the ribs, marked here with orange tape, have been found with crocodile teeth, meaning it was probably snacked on in a body of water soon after its death. Another pathology is a set of fused vertebrae near the tail.
This is 3 vertebrae fused together also fused with their chevrons. The chevrons attached to between the vertebrae. This whole pile of bones is fused together, which means at some point the bones were seriously damaged and then they didn't kill the animal. One of the experts we talked to on T-Rex says he's seen this same injury in this same part of the body in about half the specimens he's found, which is pretty interesting because it's something that regularly happens apparently. And his suspicion is that it's part of mating. This is an injury of making baby T-Rexes.
And surprisingly, the one and only preserved femur is tilted up far out of the range of motion it would normally be in. And on the inner thigh of the animal is a mysterious hole.
When we got to preparing this, one of my volunteers found that there's a hole in the bone. This is not supposed to be here. All the other T-Rex bones out there in the world have a completely smooth surface right here. This one's got a big hole right there. And not only a hole, but it's got a leading groove. And when he saw that, he thought maybe another T-Rex had chomped on this femur, so he prepared underneath in here, looking for a matching bone or a matching bite, and there's nothing. It's just a nice smooth round hole down there.
This hole is suggested to be an entry wound, as the diameter seems to match that of the tip of a Torosaurus or Triceratops brow horn, which, due to the fact that the hole is not healed, it's believed to have led to, if not outright caused, the animal's death. Speaking of ceratopsians, this leads us to our next fossil, Nicole the Torosaurus. Nicole is an intriguing specimen for sure. Ever since it was discovered, Torosaurus fossils have been rare, especially skulls as complete as this one. Nicole the Torosaurus was prepared almost half-time by museum volunteer Liane for a little over 3 years.
And we are looking here at one of our more interesting dinosaur specimens. This is a skull of a Torosaurus. This is a specimen that was found here in Wyoming, about 30 minutes from Casper. It was found on a geology class field trip with geology students from Casper College, and then the geology professor and the Tate staff eventually collected this thing. It was not complete as you see it. It was in it was a pile of bones all scattered all over the place and on top of each other. But this is a pretty good specimen that we've got, and we're pretty proud of it.
As mentioned earlier, the skull was found disarticulated in a pile, and thus not all the pieces were found.
The real bones have the gray lines in them. Those are an epoxy putty that is filling the cracks.
However, due to the fact that skulls like this one tend to be symmetrical, every bone that was missing its pair was digitally scanned, mirrored, and 3D printed to fill in the gaps, creating a nearly complete skull.
This bone here, for example, is not real. It's a 3D print based on the same bone on the other side. This is the jugal bone, but everything else mostly is all real.
Nicole has several landmark features of interest, such as a remarkably complete brain case and a mysterious circular puncture in the lower base of the frill. Potentially from a Tyrannosaurus? Maybe, but it's hard to say for certain.
There is actually, in this hole, there's a piece of rock in there. So we took this bone to the CAT scan in the local hospital, and this thing shows up really well, but it's not the shape of a T-Rex tooth. We think it's just a chunk of ironstone, which happens in the Lance Formation where this was found. But we're still pretty sure that this is quite likely a T-Rex bite wound.
The nasal horn also shows potential wounding, but that's also unsure. Some paleontologists have hypothesized that Torosaurus may not be a distinct genus and may in fact be an elderly Triceratops, but the Tate Museum staff argued that they're different enough.
These holes are genuine holes in the frill. This piece here, that up there, very thin. In a Triceratops, that part of the frill, even if it had a hole in it, would be about an inch thick.
A statement that seemed to have been settled as of 2022. Anyways, Nicole was prepared over a period of about 3 years before having a customized mount built for it. Each bone is held in place and can individually be removed for study. None of the bones would be permanently frozen in place by plaster due to this. Even most of the reconstructed pieces are free-floating. Nicole is one of only a small number of Torosaurus skulls known, and one of an even smaller number of ones that are mostly complete, so a rarer find like this one is extra special for the Tate Museum. Local museums housing fossils are incredibly important to science, as it allows for proper preservation and allows students and scientists to study them to get a better understanding as to what they would have looked like and how they would have lived. These two rarities are no exception, but of course the Tate Museum has many more treasures in store to discuss, so we will be revisiting them a few times throughout the series. So stay tuned for that and many other episodes of Exhibit Expo. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed the inaugural episode of Exhibit Expo. This has been a ton of fun to make and I have several more episodes planned going forward, so if you'd like to see more from this series, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss another episode. Thanks for watching.